For those unfamiliar with the term, a grindhouse theater was a theater that mainly showed exploitation films for very low admission fees. Very popular in their day, by the end of the 1980s they were nearly extinct. Here are 3 true scary stories that take place in grindhouse theaters. Number 1. Cannibals. Okay, I am completely dating myself by telling this story, but I guess that is no big deal. When I was in my teens, I was a huge fan of exploitation films of any kind. I often went to the grindhouses and could spend the whole day there by myself. I guess the movies that really got to me the most were the cannibal films, though. I mean, simply remembering the violence in those movies actually makes much of the torture porn crap of today pale in comparison. The theater I went to was a really old, dusty place. It played all of those really old preview and advertisements that you see parodied today. And there was generally a pretty bad element there as well. But even though there were occasionally gangs and such there, very rarely did anything violent actually happen. Well, at least off the screen. I don't recall the movies that I went to see that day, other than that they were cannibal movies. If you've seen one cannibal movie, likely you've seen every one of them. The plots are nearly identical. There were 3 of them playing that day, all in succession. This must have been a slow day at the movies, though. I was literally the only person in the theater when the first film started, so I found myself a nice seat in the middle, and then sat down to watch. About 15 minutes in, someone else came into the theater. I glanced away from the movie just to get a quick look at the guy. He was a big punk, dressed in black leather and had quite a bit of chains on his clothes. His hair was in a spiky mohawk that was dyed red. I tried not to stare, and looked away from him pretty quickly. And to my dismay, even though he had the entire theater in which to sit, he chose the seat directly behind me. And if you've had this happen to you before, you know you can't really get up and move because he would just follow you. Right away, this guy showed himself to be an obnoxious jerk. He kept laughing at all the death scenes and the cannibalism. He would shout at the screen. And occasionally, when something really got his attention, he would kick the back of my seat really hard and ask, "Did you see that? Did you just see that crap?" I never answered the guy when he asked me anything. I just held my tongue and continued to try and enjoy the movie. I hoped that after a while he'd get bored and move on, or maybe someone else would come into the theater. It wasn't unusual for people to come in the complete middle of a movie, but none of these things happened. During one of the nastier scenes of cannibalism in the movie, I suddenly felt breath on my neck. I then heard the man whisper into my ear, "How do you think people really taste? You think they might taste good?" That was it for me, and I was about to get up and leave. Before I could move, though, I felt something sharp pointing into the back of my neck. It didn't take a genius to realize he pulled a knife on me. "You ain't going anywhere, princess," he told me. I'll never forget those words. I kept my seat, and he kept the point of that knife at my neck. I was so scared and had no idea what to do. And they say people, killers, criminals, and people like that, they say they get their ideas from watching movies like this. "You think that's true?" he asked me. He paused, and when I didn't answer, he pressed the point of the knife harder. I flinched and then told him, "No, I don't." He was quiet at first and leaned forward, and then I heard him whisper, "That's funny, because I think they do, and I wonder what people taste like." He jabbed the knife and I felt my skin break. It was too much, and I guess my body took over. I jumped up, jumped over the aisle in front of me, and ran for the lobby. I didn't stop to see if he was following me. While I was in the lobby, the fire alarm went off. The usher checked in the theater, and the guy had left through an emergency exit. That was the day the Grindhouse theater died for me, because I never went back to another one. Number 2. Followed. I had a really horrifying experience one Halloween, many years ago. I was 14, and figured I was too old for trick-or-treating. My plan was just to spend the day at the movie theater, watching a marathon of horror movies. This was the late 1970s, and I know that the film Halloween was going to be one of the movies shown. But fate, or my parents, stepped in and told me first I had to take my little brother trick-or-treating. Well, like any teenager, I really didn't want to spend Halloween with my brother. Fortunately, however, my neighborhood did trick-or-treating before it got dark out, so I would still get to do my own Halloween things once I dropped him off back at home. While I was out with my brother, I noticed what had to be a kid my age or older, who was trick-or-treating on his own. I'll never forget what he looked like either. He was dressed as a big mummy, so his face was covered up. He was pretty tall also. I gave him an odd look, but didn't think anything about it. That was until I noticed him double back. He began going through the yards of houses that me and my brother were going through, although it was obvious that this had not been his plan from the beginning. I started to think he was following me, and wondered if he was someone that I knew. This continued for a while, and then I finally lost the guy. Once trick-or-treating was over, I dropped my brother off at home. I let my family know that I was going to the movie theater and would probably be home pretty late. Well, on the way to the theater, I noticed the mummy again. There were still a lot of people outside, so I figured he might be on his way home. But after a while, and a few turns down a few streets, I noticed he was following me again. Only this time, he was making it a lot more obvious than before. The sun was setting as I was going down the road, and that made everything a lot creepier. When I got to the theater, night had completely fallen. Sure enough, he followed me into the theater, and the bastard even got a discount because he came in a costume. I kid you not. He followed me into the theater and sat in the row behind me, about 6 seats down. Several times during the movie, I watched 2 full ones. I caught the guy looking over at me. Each time my glance caught his, he would hold it for a moment, before slowly looking away. Before long, though, I felt his mummy eyes right back on me. When I got up to go to the bathroom, he followed me. I went to a urinal, and he went into a stall, and it was obvious he wasn't using it. And when I was done and washed my hands, he followed me right back into the theater. I sorely wish that we had cell phones back in those days. I could have called or texted my parents to come get me. However, the movie theater did have a payphone in the lobby, and I decided after the second movie to go call my parents. I let them know what was going on, and that I was a bit worried this guy was going to try and hurt me or something, and they agreed to come and pick me up. So, I waited in the lobby, with the mummy in the lobby as well. He kept watching me. He even came out the door, and watched as I got into my parents' car and they drove away. The following day in class, my teacher had an announcement for us. Apparently, a student I knew named Howard was murdered, leaving the movie theater that night. We were told to be extra careful, and that there would be a curfew in town until the guy was caught. Unfortunately, they didn't know who the murderer was, because he was wearing a mummy costume that hid his entire face. Number 3. Usher. My first job back in the 1980s was an usher at a very old and run-down Grindhouse theater. This was around the time in the 80s, right before the VCR hit it big, and stole the exploitation movie business from the theaters. I'll always miss those theaters though. For the most part, they were dirty and not kept very well. But I felt like a major part of my life ceased to be the moment those theaters failed. It was sometimes difficult being an usher in a theater like that, due to the element that those sort of movies attracted. There had been times when I had to try and break up a fight between some pretty nasty looking dudes. There were also times when there was no way in hell I would dream of getting in the way of some of those scary dudes. But the scariest thing to happen while I worked there wasn't from gang members or anything like that. There was this odd and seemingly homeless man who began coming to the theater this particular week. He was unkempt, dirty, and smelled worse than I can even begin to tell you. But he always had money for some reason, so we always let him in. But he was unpleasant and weird to be around. He barely spoke, which was a blessing, because when he did, his breath smelled like he had been eating roadkill. He always got popcorn and a soda, and then made his way into the movie theater. This went on for about 2 weeks, and it was the same every day. The last time I saw the guy was on a Friday night. He had gone through the same pattern that he had been holding to. He watched movies all day. When the last movie was over, however, he didn't get up and leave. We let the credits play, and everyone else left the theater. But the old homeless man didn't leave. Well, none of us wanted to deal with the guy, so we drew straws as to who would go in and ask him to leave. Of course, yours truly got the shortest straw. So I slowly went into the theater and climbed the steps. The man appeared sound asleep in his chair. I called out to him several times, hoping to get his attention yet failing. I realized I'd probably have to go up to him and shake him awake. As I approached the man, trying to hold my breath due to the foul stench of him, I noticed that I didn't think he was sleeping. He wasn't breathing at all. I immediately thought he was dead. I felt like throwing up all over the floor and just leaving and calling the police or an ambulance or whatever. I just ran out. When the paramedics came, what they told us was quite shocking. The old man had been dead for nearly 12 hours. He had been stabbed in the stomach while in the movie theater, and the knife was gone. So that meant 2 things. Number 1, he didn't commit suicide. Number 2, at some point in the day, someone in our movie theater stabbed this man to death without us knowing, and left without any of us being the wiser. It was difficult as hell working in the theater once it opened back up. Business actually went up when people found out that a murder took place there. But being in there and wondering if the murderer was in the room with you, and if he would strike again, because you have no idea who he was or when he did it, that sort of fear and stress is worse than any horror movie will give you. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I had a slow first half of the month of July, so I'm going to try to do my best to catch up in the second half. I hope you like these stories, and there will be more to come. If you have ideas about what kind of stories you might like to see, leave me a comment. I'm not really a good artist myself, but I know a few of you are. I am looking to put new channel art up on my channel's main page. If anyone would like to submit something, I'd really appreciate it. For now though, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the subscribe button below, or use the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this video. Leave me a comment to let me know what you thought, and consider sharing this video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address included in the description. All I ask is that the story is original, meaning that it has not been read on any other YouTube channel. In the meantime, please don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.